Hey fam, so I want to run some ideas by you. As you know, there are two large caravans from Guatemala coming through Mexico to come to the United States border, and it's quite a lot of people, and I've been witnessing the conversations between the two camps on the issue. Now, I have quite, my history with the undocumented. I've housed undocumented people, I've worked with undocumented people, I've lived with undocumented people. My little one is half indigenous Mayan Mexican from the Yucatan Peninsula. So uh, I'm very deeply connected to the Latino community. Now, I've been noticing something that I don't think people are picking up on really. So, a lot of Republicans, conservatives, basically everyone on the right, are worried that the Democrats will always have the votes of the undocumented simply because they'll grant them a pathway to citizenship. But here's something that I think people are missing. These are just regular people who they come across the border, it doesn't make them a Democrat. And why not go to them and pitch your ideas to them, right? If you believe in whatever political party, you're a libertarian, you're a Tea Party member, you're a Green Party member, whatever it is that you are, whatever your party is, try to get them to vote. They're regular people. And here's something that I don't think a lot of people on the left realize is that a lot of these immigrants are religious. So if you have these very affluent, Ivy League, echo chamber, uber liberal, really woke, uber progressive identitarians on the left, a lot of the stuff they believe, someone who's fresh from the border is and has this very beautiful indigenous culture from Mexico or Guatemala, because there's Hondurans and Nicaraguans in there and people from Belize, so it's quite mixed. But these people are usually from very religious communities. So it would be smarter for Christians, Muslims, everyone who finds themselves not on the very far left. You can be center, independent, and then to the right. It would make more sense if they went to these people and said, hey, here's our ideas. This is what we want to vote for. Here's why you should vote for us. Here, let me show you what is awesome about America, right? Because the Republicans, I'm hearing that, they don't want critical race theory, intersectionality, this really different type of postmodern, Ivy League, UC Berkeley type talking points to brainwash, they argue, the immigrants, right? Now, the thing I find sad, though, is that the infantilization of the immigrants from the left, they see them as like, oh, well, they're stupid enough to just vote for us simply because we're going to advocate their amnesty, right? That seems kind of like, no, they're just people. Just because they come across the border doesn't mean they're going to be pledged to you for life, right? It's based on each candidate, right? A lot of these people, maybe they never even voted in their life, so it's quite absurd to think that they're going to, every single years that we have elections, they're going to always vote for the Democratic Party, right? Or even care to vote. You know what I'm saying? So if you really have solid ideas and you really are passionate about, let's say, foreign policy positions, you got certain issues on trade, right? You got infrastructure plans you want, you have social norms you want established, go to the people and talk to them and pitch their ideas like anyone else. I feel like people are not really looking at that. Now, the other flip side is that yes, the people on the left want to expand the welfare state to include open borders, even though I know they say they don't say open borders, but I'm not gonna play games. They do want a lot of everyone to be considered as refugees and just to be let in, and then go on the government programs, right? They argue also that through citizenship, they'll pay taxes, and the undocumented pay taxes anyways, via their paycheck stubs and stuff. I've seen it with my own eyes. They file tax paperwork. A lot of things can happen. They pay sales tax when they buy stuff. They participate in the economy. And not all of them take welfare because, especially now during the COVID pandemic, I have witnessed how horrifically they get no aid, and that citizens on unemployment are suffering, but the undocumented are even worse because they don't have unemployment benefits, right? So, when you really look at it, it's like the immigrants are not necessarily leeches. That's not even something that should be considered. I understand they don't like the concept of what they call anchor babies, where a woman is pregnant and then she gives birth. They don't want citizenship to be granted to that child, but I'd argue you are, if somebody came over from England back in the day and they came into the colonies and their child was born, they would consider themselves different than part of, the Empire of Britain. So, I mean, if you're born on the soil, you're here. And plus, we have military bases where babies are born, and they're sometimes born in different countries, but they're still considered a United States citizen simply because they were born on a military base, right? So it's not really fair. If she comes here and it's on this soil within our, territory that our taxpayers help to sustain, right? That we've agreed to, this is our land, right? This is Canada, this is Mexico, this is America. They're within that geographical mapped boundary. You are technically an American. Now, I understand they say, oh, well, some women come over, they have too many children, they have no skills that are going to be enough to fund them, therefore they go on welfare. Now, I find that interesting because those immigrant women usually are house cleaners if they're a stay-home mom. They're always hustling and always doing something, and they have no problem, not committing crimes. If you compare immigrant mothers to domestic women who are, citizens, and let's say, you look at the crime rate, right? A single mom, maybe in one area who is a citizen, they can commit crimes the same as, an undocumented person. And undocumented usually are more afraid, the women at least, of committing crimes because they don't want to get deported. Now, I agree, if you are illegal and you commit a crime, you should be, a violent crime, you're out of here. I don't believe that you should stay here. I think we all rationally agree with that, and some people say no, they should stay anyways. They shouldn't be sent back because it's worse because of the cartels. So there's so dynamic, these really important conversations going on, but I think that we really just have to focus on pitching your ideas to them. Honestly, California is the place with a lot of immigrants in Texas, right? So you have the federal rules, but you have activists in the states who are preaching a lot of pretty words, but when push came to shove, as we have seen, they didn't really help the immigrant community. Very few people even donated to food banks of quality food that wasn't like really, really low quality food or expired food to the food banks, as I've seen. Even in wealthy areas with wealthy food banks, the food is just like, So people are not very charitable, but they like to say a lot of loving things on Twitter and kind of get the clout for it without actually doing it, right? There's so many different ways people can help the undocumented, but you don't really see it a lot, but you hear a lot of talking, a lot of virtue signaling. So I understand that people in other states say Californians will not do their part in helping the people feel welcome so that they get integrated. Instead, will alienate them, isolate them, ignore them, and then they will create a parallel culture that will make everybody feel less connected, which will then, fray the flag of the union, as they say. Now, as I reiterated several times, is that I think we have to just pitch your ideas because they're just people. I understand you have no obligation to let them into your country, but we know the political games that the Democrats will play. They'll use the immigrants as human shields. They'll have them show up at the border. They will allow them to be, beaten on so they can get their photo ops. And then they'll say, well, you let them in. And then as soon as they let them in, they'll forget about them and they'll start, talking about a Hollywood celebrity, and the media will forget about them. And everyone who lives in California will have to, do the part that the government and other citizens, especially the uber liberal wealthy types that live in the financial district and such in San Francisco and Napa Valley, they will, in Tiburon and Sausalito, they won't really do as much. And a lot of places also is that you have to let the undocumented know you're going to be living in some very violent areas, right? Now, a Republican could go to them and say, You're going to go into a Democrat ghetto. It's going to be brutal. There's not going to be a lot of services for you. And you're going into an area where people are chanting to defund cops. And you're a newly arrived immigrant. There's not a lot of affordable college or housing for you. There's not a lot of programs. And you're going to live in a pretty violent area. Here's why you should vote for us, because we believe in a certain fiscal policy and rugged individualism. And you could get into all kinds of interesting topics with them, but I would argue just pitch the immigrants your ideas and don't fight over them, right? Don't think they're all going to vote Democrat for life, is my point. What do you think, Van?